Media.
It's driving behavior, right? Through brain chemistry. And at the very worst, it can create an addiction that you're not even aware of. Hi, my name is Ronnie Cruz. After almost 2 decades as a career network marketer, I realized that despite continual work on my personal and professional development, that I had hit a massive brick wall. So I took a deep and honest look at myself, top to bottom, hoping to find answers. And my search led me to one conclusion. The definitions I held of my business, of my world, of my life were the very things holding me back. If I wanted to change, if I wanted to grow beyond my current circumstances, I had to wipe the slate clean and redefine. This show is dedicated to helping you identify the belief systems, the mindsets, the very definitions that have held you back, and then help you break through those limitations to finally create the life you've been working so hard to achieve. Welcome to the Redefine Podcast. Okay, happy podcast day. Happy podcast day to you. Welcome to the show if you're brand new. And of course, if you are an existing listener, welcome back. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, let's just dive right into it. Today, I want to talk about limiting your screen time. And you know, I'm sure this is not a new conversation. I'm sure you've already heard many things and seen many things that have stated that you should limit your screen time, and that overexposure to your device and to the internet can have very detrimental effects. For today, I want to hone in on one particular aspect of this that I believe is the gateway to all of that, right? A gateway to all of those, the cascading negative effects of overexposure to your device and to the internet. So I want to tell you a story of something that happened to me personally over the holidays. And this is the reason why I wanted to share, to talk about this topic in particular. That inspired me to talk about this topic. Now, if you've been listening to the show, if you've been following the show, you know that I've had a fairly difficult last few months, or at least I've communicated that I've had a difficult last few months, and I've been in a bit of a depressive state, right? Now, mornings for me generally are slow anyways, right? I'm not a morning person. It's a process. Going from sleep state to wake state, it's a process. You know, I got to be alone. I need quiet. It's just a slow process. And now, given that I'm in a bit of a depressive state, it's even more arduous, right? It's even heavier in the morning. So it takes time. One morning over the holidays, I woke up and I immediately reached for my phone and I started scrolling the social feeds. Now, this is not something I do regularly. I rarely do that. I intentionally, purposefully limit my exposure to the internet. But this particular morning, I just, without any intention, without any purpose, I didn't have anything I needed to check. I just reached for my phone and started scrolling. I was laying in bed for like 5-10 minutes scrolling the social feeds before I realized, okay, I gotta get up, right? And I wasted too much time. So I got up, went about my day, went about my morning routine, and I realized, it dawned on me like, hey, I actually feel better. Right, I actually feel better, and so I had to kind of really pay attention to that. And I have high self-awareness. I think, I had tracking my moods and my mental state. And this one morning, I was like, oh, I actually feel good. Not that I didn't want to feel good, but I had to pay attention to that because it was such a stark difference from the previous mornings that I had been having. Right, so I just clocked that, I registered that in the memory bank, and went about my day. The next morning, normal routine without checking the phone. Again, I don't do that normally in the mornings, and it was back to kind of the heavy process, right? The heaviness, the slow, arduous process. So I had to really start kind of examining that, right? Like, what was the difference in that one day? Again, not that I didn't want to feel better, but maybe there's a tool or something that I could use to help me work through this depression. And the only thing that I could really pinpoint it to that I did differently was that I checked my phone and I scrolled the social feeds for 5-10 minutes that one morning that I felt better. And I drew the conclusion that I was probably feeling better because of the amount of dopamine that my brain released as a result of scrolling the social feeds for 5-10 minutes first thing in the morning, right? And having drawn this conclusion, I realized how dangerous our devices are, and how dangerous that this access to the social feeds and to the internet really, really can be. And I say dangerous because it's brain chemistry. It's affecting brain chemistry. Anything that affects brain chemistry, we have to take seriously. When we talk about drugs and alcohol and even things like caffeine and sugar, and how it affects our brain chemistry, we take those things very, very seriously. However, like when it comes to like dopamine that's released by our devices, which is almost common knowledge at this point, right? Every time you open your social feed, or you open the internet in your device, you get a hit of dopamine because it's something pleasurable, right? It's activating the reward centers of your brain, right? Like it's almost common knowledge at this point, but we don't take it seriously. I guess, I don't know. The only reason I can come up with that we don't take it seriously is because our devices and access to the internet is so fully integrated into modern life. We can't exist without it, right? You can't function in modern life unless you're a hermit living in the middle of the woods, completely cut off from civilization. You're going to have some exposure to a device and to the internet, right? And so we kind of blow it off how insidious it can be, and the effect that it has on our brain chemistry. We just kind of like, it's just part of it, right? We just kind of brush it aside. But I really want to raise your awareness around it, because anything that affects your brain chemistry affects your behavior, right? And at the very least, overexposure to our devices and to the internet creates a compulsiveness in our behavior and in our actions, right? Have you ever been, on your way to do something and you're crossing the room, and you just randomly, in the middle of it, in the middle of walking across the room, pick up your phone and check your social feeds, again, without intention, without purpose. You're not checking your email, or you're not checking for anything in particular. You just pick it up and check your feeds. I mean, we see it all the time, right? You see people, I'm even guilty of this, at a stoplight, in their car, right, while driving, but at a stoplight, check your social feed, right? It creates a compulsiveness, right? And compulsiveness, that's the least of our worries, because there's been studies that show like an increase in depression and anxiety and feelings of isolation and loneliness, right? Especially in the young generation, in the youngest generation that doesn't know life without the internet, and doesn't know life without devices. Compulsiveness, yeah, it's kind of lower on the scale. But when we talk about compulsive behavior and compulsive actions, well, yeah, then you may not necessarily get the outcomes and the results that are ideal for you, right? When you're programming yourself to be more and more compulsive in your action and your behavior, your intentionality and purpose go out the window, and therefore the results and the actions are less intentional. I.e., your goals and the things that you've set out to do, especially this year, right? Like it's a new year. You have new goals, you have new visions that you want to achieve for yourself, but you're not going to achieve those things if your actions and your behaviors are compulsive, if your actions and your behaviors aren't intentional and are not purposeful. You have to have intentional and purposeful actions and behaviors in order to create intentional and purposeful results and outcomes, i.e., goals. We're going to achieve less of the things that we want to achieve in life if we're allowing ourselves to be programmed by our devices to be more compulsive, right? And we don't know necessarily that's happening. We are allowing this thing to happen because it's pleasurable, right? It feels good. So it's like, okay, it can't be that bad. It's just the internet. It's just social feeds. It's just, dog videos and cat videos and silly squirrels and memes. But again, it's driving behavior, right? Through brain chemistry. And at the very worst, it can create an addiction that you're not even aware of. Right. And like, I don't know, the stat I think is like, on average, a person spends 4.5 hours on their device mindlessly scrolling. Right. That's a lot of time. If we're awake, let's say you get 8 hours of sleep, you're awake 16 to 20 hours a day. Right. 4 hours is a huge chunk of time. It's not like you're sitting on your phone for 4.5 hours a day, but you check it compulsively, enough to add up to 4.5 hours. That's a lot of lost productivity. But beyond productivity, again, you're creating a compulsiveness in your behaviors and your actions. And when like, in order to create a life that's intentional, the life that you want, you have to be more intentional with your behaviors and actions. You have to have purpose. You have to be more purposeful with your behaviors and actions, right? So yeah, really, really important. And again, the point of this conversation for today is to raise your awareness around what potentially happens or can happen when you're not regulating the amount of time you spend on your devices, right? Like, it's insidious what this stuff does. Now, of course, again, it's impossible, like I said, to not have some exposure to the device and to the internet. I mean, like a huge part of my work is online, and involves being on the social feeds, as I'm assuming it is for a lot of you. So really limit your time and be purposeful. Again, have intention when you are on your feeds. Even when I'm just kind of vegging out and doom scrolling, that's with intention to veg out and doom scroll, right? Not to compulsively pick up my phone every 5 minutes, or on my way to, do something else, compulsively pick up my phone and check the feed without any intention and purpose, right? Even the doom scrolling, even the vegging out, for me, I have intention, and I set time to do that. So really, I think the thing that I want you to do is, again, the purpose for this conversation is to raise your awareness that this is in fact happening, whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not, whether you accept it or not. This is exactly what's happening when you pick up your phone. You're getting a dopamine hit, and it's driving compulsiveness. And so we have to work extra hard to be intentional and to be purposeful with our use and our exposure to our devices and to our screens. So that way we can fortify and strengthen our purposefulness and our intention around our actions and around our behaviors, so that we can then be more purposeful and intentional with the results that we create in our lives, i.e. our goals and our dreams. And hopefully you've created and set some new goals and some new visions for yourself for 2025. And so that's why I wanted to have this conversation on the onset of the new year, so that you can, it can set the tone for the rest of 2025 and help you achieve the things that you want to achieve this year. All right. So that's it. Hopefully that makes sense there, and as far as like the dopamine and the science and all that behind it, it's really just a layman's understanding. But I think from the anecdotal side of it, and my personal experience of feeling like actually feeling the effects of what our exposure to devices does. Hopefully that drives home the point that you should really be paying attention to how much time you spend on your screens and what it's doing to you. Okay. All right. So that's going to be it. Thanks for tuning in. I finally got this message through. You will never know this from the final episode, the released episode, but it's taken me like 3 hours to get through this message. And like 20 takes, but we got it through. Of course, we're going to have a fresh new one for you next Tuesday. So yeah, until then, have a great week, have a great weekend, and we'll catch you with a fresh new one on Tuesday next week. So yeah, be well, be safe. We'll see you in the next episode.